Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my library. If you're new here, hello, my name is Chinzia, and if you're not new here and you're one of my lovely regulars, hi, how are you? I hope you're doing splendidly. So I was on a live stream the other week, and we were discussing like my favourite mythical entities, as it were. It was more of a generalization, and I realised that my favourite had to go back to the Minotaur, which was an unexpected response to those on the stream. But then I had a flashback to a book that I read as a child, which I discovered and pop it up here right now. And it just got me thinking, I want to look into the Minotaur again and read all about it, the history, the culture, everything, and obviously the myth in which it features. So thank you Patreon for making this video possible. Let's explore the myth of the Minotaur. So most people have heard about the legend of the Minotaur, the Cretan monster from ancient Greek mythology, who had the body of a man and the head of a bull. Now, in the myth that we know him, his name is Asterion, and he was the son of the witch queen Pasiphae, daughter of Helios and sister of Circe, and he was also the son of King Minos' prized snow-white bull, which was sent by Poseidon. You see, before his existence, Poseidon sent the bull to King Minos for sacrifice, but the king was too proud of the strong, beautiful creature and chose to keep it for himself. And to try and trick Poseidon, he sacrificed a different bull in the name of Poseidon, but gods are silly, but they're not that silly. And furious at the betrayal, Poseidon took his revenge on King Minos by punishing his wife, obviously. So he cursed Pasiphae and made her fall in love with the Cretan bull, this snow-white bull. And yes, this Cretan white bull was eventually wrestled and tamed by Heracles in one of his 12 labours, which I've made 2 whole videos documenting. Anyway, Pasiphae fell head over heels lust for the snow-white Cretan bull. And if anyone knows Greek mythology, the burden of divine madness is unbearable and impossible to overcome. So Pasiphae, lustful for the bull, turned to the legendary craftsman Daedalus for help. Being the enabler that he was, Daedalus crafted a hollow wooden cow, covered it in cowhide, and let Pasiphae climb inside the bull so she could mate with it. And that was how Asterion was conceived, and when he was born, King Minos was horrified. However, he saw the potential of having a monster in his control, so he didn't order for it to be killed. Instead, he ordered Daedalus and his son Icarus, both of whom he had imprisoned for their role in his wife's bestial affair, to confine the monster near his palace of Knossos. Daedalus thus constructed the Labyrinth, a maze with only one entrance, making it impossible to exit once inside. Unless you just turned around, obviously. It was so well built that even Daedalus barely found his way out of it whilst he was building it. So Asterion was then placed in the centre and left there to wander the labyrinth, waiting to feast on human flesh. So having a flesh-eating Minotaur was the perfect ammunition King Minos needed to reign over his city with fear, and he used the Minotaur to take revenge on the king of Athens for the death of his son. See, now there are 2 versions of the events for the death of Androgeus. The first one is Androgeus was killed by the Athenians out of jealousy, because he was so incredibly skilled and kept winning at the Panathenaic Games. However, in another story, he's actually indirectly killed by the king of Athens himself, Aegeus, who, angered by Aegeus' victories in the games, sent him away to slave the invincible Marathonian bull, which inevitably killed Androgeus. Yes, there are a lot of bulls and cows in this family's history, more than you can actually imagine. So Minos wanted revenge on the Athenians for his son's death, so he demanded retribution in the form of human sacrifice. King Minos demanded that Athens pay tribute to Crete in the form of 7 maidens and 7 youths every 9 years, or in some myths, it's annual. But again, it depends. These youths were then forced into the labyrinth and spent the last living moments running in fear from the Minotaur, who hunted them down and devoured them. So the sacrifices of the Minotaur went on for a few years, until one day the Athenian hero Theseus, the son of King Aegeus, decided to pull a Katniss Everdeen and volunteered himself as tribute to the Minotaur. His father was naturally reluctant, but he was unable to persuade Theseus to stay. So, eager to know about his son's safety, he gave Theseus a white sail. You see, the ship that was taking them away had a black sail, and Aegeus asked his son to swap the sails on his return so that he could see in the distance if his son was safe and alive as the ship was approaching Athens. So with that in mind, the children of the tribute left and arrived in Crete. Theseus informed King Minos that he was there to kill the Minotaur, and King Minos told the prince that if he could kill the Minotaur, he and all the other tributes would be free to go, and nothing more would ever be said of the tribute and debt in the future, which makes sense, there's no Minotaur anymore, but there you go. However, he's a bit of a petty man, King Minos, and he actually said, okay, go and kill him, but he didn't arm Theseus with anything to defeat the Minotaur, and instead threw him and the other tributes into the dungeon to await their fate. Meanwhile, King Minos' two daughters, Ariadne and Phaedra, had taken a bit of a liking to Theseus and decided to help him. So the sisters broke him free and took him to the Labyrinth that night to attack the Minotaur whilst he was sleeping. Ariadne armed Theseus with a sword and gave him the end to the clue of yarn, which he tied to the entrance of the Labyrinth, or held on to the end of it, again depending on the myth, and this piece of yarn served Theseus as a guide back to the exit. Ariadne stayed outside, watching the yarn unravel as Theseus wandered into the labyrinth, quietly following the sound of the Minotaur's heavy breathing, deep in slumber. Then found him, killed the Minotaur, and tugged the yarn to notify Ariadne that he had survived, and he followed it back to freedom. He then gathered up the other Athenians from their prison and led them back to the ship, taking both Ariadne and Phaedra with him to protect them from their father's wrath. Thankful for all of her help, Theseus promised to marry Ariadne, but he clearly had a change of mind because when they stopped on an island of Naxos, Theseus abandoned Ariadne there while she was sleeping and left with her sister, who he married instead. And yes, you are correct, this is the earliest representation and documentation of ghosting. Theseus was clearly thinking with only his trousers rather than his head on the journey home because the idiot forgot to change the black sail to white on his return. So his poor father, King Aegeus, was looking out for the ship, and upon seeing the black sails approach Athens in the distance, he threw himself into the sea and drowned to death, devastated at the loss of his son, which is why we call that sea today the Aegean. Though I actually like to think that Theseus, because he was a scheming brat after all, purposefully didn't swap the sails over, because the death of his father meant that he became the new king of Athens. How convenient that he forgot to change the sails. So, as you can tell from this myth, cows and bulls feature a lot, and actually they feature quite heavily throughout Greek mythology. As I've already mentioned, Heracles' 12 labours featured numerous bulls and cow-centred tasks, including the taming of the Cretan white bull, and taming the cattle of Georion. But cows also feature throughout other myths. You see, Zeus turned himself into a bull to then abduct and R-word Europa, and that R-word conceived, who'd have guessed it, King Minos himself. Cows and bulls were clearly going to haunt that family line for many generations. Then there's the myth of Io, which has two iterations. In one of the iterations, Zeus turned Io into a cow after, yes again, R-wording her, in order to try and hide her from Hera. However, in another iteration of the myth, it is actually Hera who turns Io into a cow after finding out that her husband had R-worded her, and she wanted to take revenge on the woman who was assaulted by Zeus because, yes, let us always blame the victim. Additionally, cows feature quite heavily in the Odyssey, as you know, when Odysseus' crew are killed after feasting on the sacred cattle of Helios. What's interesting is the connection of the Minotaur story, because there's a lot of social ancient history embedded within it. The Minotaur of the Labyrinth embodies several traits found in the culture of Crete and the ancient Minoan civilization. Bulls and maize motifs are found throughout the Minoan culture, which actually dominated the Mediterranean from around 3000 BCE to about 1100 BCE. In confronting and overcoming the bull, a symbol of Crete, Theseus symbolises the flourishing of the Aegean civilizations in the middle of the 2nd millennium BCE, as mainland Greece replaced Crete as the dominant power. You see, Crete started to become the trading power of the Mediterranean around 3000 BCE. By the middle of the 2nd millennium BCE, it was at the centre of the extensive trade network with Egypt, Syria, and the Aegean islands, and mainland Greece. Minoans established settlements throughout the Mediterranean along these trade routes, and with that they brought their culture, language, art and textiles, which became very fashionable and were welcomed. After 1450 BCE, Crete began to decline as the Mycenaean Greeks started to dominate the eastern Mediterranean. Their written language, known to scholars as Linear B, was adapted from the language of the Minoans and is now known as the early form of Greek. So, from 1900 to 1903, British archaeologist Arthur Evans worked on a hunch that the Mycenaean Greece was heavily influenced by Crete, and thus he excavated on the island and found a royal palace at the site of Knossos, and many artefacts featuring bulls. And it was him who actually named the culture Minoan, after the myth of King Minos. Whether Minos was the name of an individual king or the title like Pharaoh, we don't know. However, Herodotus mentions Minos in his histories. He talks about a Minos of Knossos as having ruled the sea, and also mentions a detail found in the myth of the Minotaur. It says, quote, Sarpedon and Minos of Crete fought for the throne, and the victorious Minos expelled Sarpedon. However, whilst it exists in the histories, there's also a lot of evidence to suggest that the myth is entirely allegorical. Minos may have been the name for the ruling dynasty of Minoan Crete during its height, which was around 1600 BCE, rather than an individual king. And Theseus' mission to Crete could be an allegory for a revolt of the Greek subject peoples who were obliged to send tribute to Knossos, making Knossos itself the Labyrinth, because the term labyrinth is taken from Labrys, which, according to Plutarch, was the Lydian word for the double-bitted axe, and the double-bitted axe was a sacred symbol of Knossos. You see, the double axe symbol was a sign of the Minoan goddess and was found abundantly throughout Knossos, especially in the hall of the double axe. Another theory is that the design of the mythical labyrinth grew out of a structure that was not a maze, but a mosaic dance floor. And actually, Homer describes such a dance floor design by Daedalus in the Iliad, on which he actually describes the aristocratic youth of Crete dancing on. Knossos also held a sporting event, which seems to be mirrored in the myth. The 14 ewes of Athens that were sent there as tribute may symbolise the men and the women who partook in the Minoan bull leaping event, which was a non-violent form of bullfighting in which athletes and gymnasts vaulted over bulls as part of a ceremonial rite. Now, Theseus himself was seen as a principal Athenian hero who was symbolic of the city, especially during the 6th and the 5th centuries BCE. Interestingly, it was during this time that Persia was Athens' greatest enemy, and after the defeat of the Persian army at Salamis in 480 BCE and the consequential military and commercial expansion of Athens, there was a spike in artistic representations of Theseus and the Minotaur. And this increase in representation has cemented in many researchers' minds that the Minotaur was symbolic of the foreign enemy of Athens that they had to defend their home against. From what we know, the Minoans weren't deadly enemies of the Greeks, but the Minoans exerted great influence over the Mycenaean culture of the Greek islands and the mainland, which may have been seen as a cultural threat to the Greeks. Now, some of you who are far more familiar with the Minotaur story and its relation to Plato are probably wanting me to discuss the Minotaur's connection with Atlantis. But I'm afraid there's far too much to cover about that topic here. But if you'd like me to make a video on Atlantis and discover the Minotaur's connection to it, please give this video a like to let me know, and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on that video. And that's the end of the exploration of the Minotaur. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Patreon, for making this video possible, and I will see you next week for another video. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.